Alrighty then. We will just begin, is what we'll do. Yeah. As promised, PJ Christmas. All right. Welcome. As promised, yes indeed. It's Saturday, March 25th, 2024, 12 noon Pacific Standard Time. We're going to talk about the duality of God. Uh-oh. That's right. The duality of God. What could that possibly be? Well, tap the screen, share the live. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be talking to TikTokers here on my tablet, recording into a camera, which will go up on YouTube a little bit later. Aaron Herland, welcome. DS, welcome. Come on in, everybody. Tap the screen, share the live, because I'm telling you, you're going to like this, and you're going to feel bad that you didn't tell other people about it. I guarantee you. Okay, so if you want to see my other stuff, boom, YouTube, Principal Project of San Diego, look for John Kenny. All my stuff is there. Whoa, look at that force of God. What we're going to do, as promised, we're going to deal with this. That you don't have any idea what that is because you've never seen it before, I guarantee that. But I'm going to pull that apart a little bit later. We're going to basically map God. In our arrogance, we're going to map God, okay? All right, the one they call Brandy Cardi Fisher. Okay, here we go. If we are always content with the everyday things that we see and hear, we will never arrive at true knowledge. Who said that? Yeah, Plato. Real smart guy. If we are content, if you're content where you are, you'll never advance. It's human nature to want to evolve and to progress and to know more, to be more, to make more, etc., and contribute to humanity. Many, many ideas have come and gone. Hey, Papa Dog, I got to ask you, were you the one that wanted my PowerPoint files? Let me know. Socrates, the Aristotelian era, the great thinkers prior to Christ came. Confucius came. Buddha, Islam, Hinduism, and the Judeo-Christian tradition have all tried to solve the problems of mankind, yet here we are, still in a fallen world. Now there's a weird fascination with communism. Socialism. And as Vladimir Lenin said, the goal of socialism is communism. So don't even play with that. That's a whole lecture in itself, but we'll deal with that at another time. Suffice it to say, today we're going to deal with the Judeo-Christian tradition. Why? Why does the Judeo-Christian tradition get singled out for special treatment? Well, there's a good reason for that. Because the Judeo-Christian tradition dominates the entire planet, just about. All of North and Central and South America, South Africa, basically all of Europe. Before the Bolshevik Revolution, Russia was Eastern Orthodox. Korea, the Philippines are basically Christian, all of Australia, etc., etc., etc. We are in the year of our Lord, just so happens, 2024. Come on in, tap the screen, share live. But you know what? It's a Judeo-Christian teaching, but nonetheless, this is for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It does not matter who you are, what background you come from. You can get something out of this. They say, what is it? Minds are like parachutes. They only work when they're open. I always say seatbelts fastened, thinking caps on. All right? The only way you can inherit the wisdom or knowledge of someone else is to open yourself and open your mind to new ideas. You don't have to necessarily accept them, but listen to other perspectives. You will find your own perspective broadening and deepening. So this is for everybody. I don't care if you're an atheist, believer, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, shamanist, you worship rocks, you're confused. Doesn't matter. You can get something out of this. This is time well spent. Thanks for coming in, guys. Scott, Anna, great. Hang out. You're going to love this. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves a question. Very important question. Is new truth being revealed? A lot of people are claiming new truth, but this is a special time in history, and we're going to show you exactly why. Now, listen. Ah, there we go. Mem. Very good. That's right. When two or more are gathered, I am there in the midst, God says. Okay, Jesus said that. Is new truth being revealed? And how can we know? Well, I'll tell you what. If Jesus was indeed a man of his word, I think we can take him at his word when he says in John 16, I have yet many things to say unto you, but you cannot bear them now. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you into all truth. Ho! For he will not speak of himself, but whatsoever he hears, he will speak and will show you the things that are to come. Jesus is promising 2,000 years ago that there's going to come a time in the future when everything would be revealed. Everything would be clarified. Christianity, oh my goodness gracious, Christianity is divided into 400 different denominations centered on one book. How does that happen? How does that happen? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense at all. Divided to the point where even in Ireland, Catholics and Protestants were battling each other for hundreds of years, centered on the same book. It's terrible. Joseph Smith did not cover this. Let me tell you, he did not cover this. Jesus continues in the 16th chapter of John. These things have I spoken to you in Proverbs, stories, but the time comes when I shall no more speak to you in Proverbs, but I will show you, plainly, plainly of the Father. Jesus is promising a time in the future where there will be clarity. How do we know that we might be in that time? How do we know we might be in that time? Well, if we go by the biblical narrative, Adam and Eve were in the ideal. They had a fall of some sort, which is another lecture that I'll do at another time. 2,000 years after the fall, Moses comes with the 10 Commandments out of the chaos of the fall, out of the utter, imagine, imagine things are so bad, you have to send a flood to straighten things out, right? Very interesting. So Moses comes with the 10 Commandments. Finally, there's rails to run on, right? What? What in the world? Live visibility restricted for 10 minutes. What? I have some kind of restriction on my live. Oh my goodness. I'm not promoting any product. For some reason they're saying I'm promoting a product. How ridiculous. God. Okay, Moses comes with the 10 Commandments in the Old Testament. 2,000 years later, Jesus comes with the New Testament Gospels. And he says, I am the fulfillment of the law. Jesus goes further to say, these commandments are summed up in two. Love God, love your neighbor, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. So 600 plus edicts of the Old Testament are summed up in two. Love God, love your neighbor. The first 5 commandments are between God and man. The last 5 are between people. See? Jesus is unalived, unfortunately, which he should not have been. That's another lecture, which I'll do at another time. And he says, I've got to come back. So that leads us now to the completed Testament age. Interestingly enough, it seems like every 2,000 years, you know what, that's really disturbing, that TikTok restricted my video, my live, because it said I was promoting something. If someone can tell me what I was promoting, please tell me. I held up the Bible. Oh boy. Wow. We're in bad shape, boys and girls. It's worse than I thought. Every 2,000 years, God reveals something new in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Like clockwork. You can set your clock to this, right? Every 2,000 years, because God has been driving history back to the ideal. If you take the word history, this doesn't prove anything. This doesn't prove anything, but it's an interesting thing to note. If you divide the word history into 2 words, you get his story. I know it doesn't prove anything, but it's fun, right? Perhaps history is not just a random series of disconnected events, but actually following a formula leading to an end. Something to think about. So we are in, if we're going by these 2,000 year periods, we've already passed the year 2000 by 24 years. So we should not be surprised at all that there's some brand new expression of truth in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Jesus tried to get the nation of Israel to come with him, to come on this new adventure in a sense. He said, I am the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. I want to bring you to the next phase of God's providence. They couldn't do it. John the Baptist was unalived. Jesus was unalived. The disciples were all unalived. Israel was destroyed by the Roman Empire in 70 AD. And then the Roman Empire itself was destroyed in the 4th century by the Visigoths. And then the world went into the Dark Ages. That's another lecture. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves the question, where does it all begin? SpongeBob wants to know. He wants to know too. There is a beginning. There is a beginning. Thank you, ma'am. Wow. Tap the screen, share it alive, folks. Genesis 1:27, God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Wait a minute. Male and female created he them. There's no way to pretzel this into anything other than what it says. The image of God is masculine and feminine. Well, prove that. Well, okay, sure. In mankind, we have men and women, right? In animals, there's male and female, right? Plants have a stamen and a pistil, the reproductive parts of a plant, and you get more plants. Plants are made of molecules. Now it starts getting a little more interesting. Molecules have a positive and negative element. If you take 2 atoms of hydrogen plus 1 atom of oxygen, what do you get? Show of hands. Water, of course. Molecules are made of atoms. Atoms have a proton and an electron going around a neutron. Wait a minute, it gets even more interesting. Atoms are made of particles. Particles have a positive and negative charge or valence, and particles, are made of energy. And energy is invisible. So at the very, very building blocks of the material world that you see right now is an invisible energetic source. All right? Now, St. Paul, 2,000 years ago, had a grip on this without the benefit of electron microscopes and unaided by scientific equipment. Paul got this in Romans 1:20. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even as eternal power and Godhead, so they're without excuse. Even St. Paul, 2,000 years ago, got this. The invisible things of God are clearly seen in the things that have been created. 20th century and 21st century science takes that a step further. And then what happens? Along comes Max Planck. Oh my goodness. 2,000 years after Paul, Max Planck comes with the following. Seat belts fastened, thinking caps on. Now, Max Planck got the Nobel Prize for physics in 1918, and in 1944, however, went on to say this in a conference in Vienna. As a man who has devoted his whole life to the most clear-headed science, to the study of matter, see, he had been in an electron microscope all of his life, studying the nature of atoms. The atheists will say, well, it's appeal to authority. Yeah, pretty big authority. A guy who's been living in an electron microscope for most of his life, right? I can tell you about the result of my research. My research about atoms, not his supposition, not his thinking, not what I think about atoms, but the result of his research. He says there is no matter as such. I can't make this up. There is no matter. In other words, there's no matter as you think you know it. All matter originates and exists only by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this most minute solar system of the atom together. Here it comes. And he concludes, we must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. Very interesting that they're using the word matrix now. They're using the word the force in movies and in culture. Right? The Matrix. Great film, by the way. So, Now, along comes, oh my goodness, now we're coming 100 years forward with the CERN Super Collider. The CERN Super Collider in Switzerland. And the God Particle. For the TikTokers, the God Particle. YouTubers, the God Particle. Leon Lederman. And here it goes. The Higgs boson has been discovered as of 2012. Tap the screen, share the live. Wow. Man, this is for the YouTube crowd. The Higgs boson is sometimes referred to as the God particle, much to the chagrin of scientists who prefer the official name. Its discovery lends strong support to the standard model of particle physics, which is thought to govern the basic building blocks of matter. The Higgs boson particle is important to the standard model because it signals the existence of the Higgs field, an invisible energy field present throughout the universe, not localized, throughout the universe, that imbues other particles with mass. In other words, we have to ask ourselves the question, how do particles get their mass? They have to get it from somewhere. Cause and effect, basic Newtonian principle. Since its discovery 8 years ago, the particle has been making waves, making waves in the physics community. So, essentially, boiled down, the Higgs boson is the juncture point between the invisible world and the physical world. If, in fact, atoms are getting their mass through the Higgs boson, which is present throughout the universe, that mass has to be coming from another realm, another invisible realm that we've never been to. We've never seen it, right? The Higgs boson is like the end of the line on the quantum scale before everything disappears, all right? Tap the screen, share it live. Wow. So, what does that look like? Universal. If the Higgs boson is correct, and everything seems, nobody's disproved it. They've had 12 years to do so, but it hasn't happened. So that force, that Higgs boson, or that force is universal, it's prime, and it's a force. Universal prime force, or UPF, boom. It's universal. In other words, it permeates everything in the universe at the subatomic level. There has to be something, a binding force in the universe. What happens when you interfere with that process? Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Los Alamos. As soon as you begin splitting atoms and playing around with that at a subatomic level, look at the energy that is released. Look at what happens at the subatomic level. It's prime. It's prime. It's at the very base of the created world, and it's a force, an invisible force. The word God itself is somewhat prejudicial because the word God brings with it the history of religion, which is very spotted. It's a very spotty history, right? The Salem witch trials, the Spanish Inquisition, etc., etc., etc. There's a spotty history and a very tragic history with religion. And it's not confined just to the Christian faith. Every single faith has some kind of blot on its record, in a sense, if you will. So, again, we're going to tackle this, which, if just looking at it doesn't make a lick of sense, but we are going to pull this apart piece by piece, and you're going to absolutely love this. Tap the screen, share the live, please. My goodness, all kinds of folks said they were going to be here, and they're not. That's a beautiful thing. Tap the screen, share the live. Here we go. We're going to tear into this graph now. Oh boy, here it comes. Bang. So, how does that masculinity that Genesis 1:27 talks about, how does that manifest in the created world? Well, you start right out, masculine and feminine, plus and minus, subject, object. In humans, how does that manifest? Men and women. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but this is just for graphic purposes, right? Animals are male and female. Here we go, a male and female lion. Just so happens, plants. Plants have a stamen and pistil. Stamen and pistil, the reproductive parts of a plant, which creates more plants. Tap the screen, share the live. Plants are made of molecules, have a positive negative element. If you take 2 atoms of hydrogen, atom of oxygen, you get water. They become something completely different. It's not hydrogen, it's not oxygen, it's water. Boom. There you have it. 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of oxygen, off you go. Molecules are made of atoms. Atoms have a proton and electron going around a neutron. Atoms are made of particles which have a positive and negative valence. We talked about this before, but now we're gonna pull this apart on a graph, and we're gonna add an extra element over here that you're gonna love, right? Tap the screen, share it live, everybody. Wowie zowie. So there you go. Particles are made of energy. Boom. Particles are made of energy, and energy is invisible. Boom. So whatever that universal prime force is, whatever that God is, again, that was the point I wanted to reiterate. The name God itself is prejudicial. For me, it carries a memory of Catholic school and the nuns that were very rough with me because I was the class clown, right? So if I were to attach my understanding of God to what happened to me in Catholic school, I might not ever believe, right? But that wasn't the case. It didn't end up that way. I ended up believing anyway, but they were really tough. So many people have had very bad experiences with the religious world, and they're scarred by that. So when you say God, for some people it's like, bad memories, right? So we want to try to remove that. Let's take that word out for a second and replace that again with universal prime force. Let's view this God figure as a scientific precept first. Let's try to view it from a scientific perspective before we view it anyway. Nature is binary. There are anomalies. The comment is not all of nature is binary. No, that's true. There's asexuals, there's worms, there's hermaphroditism, etc. But that is the anomaly. That is the anomaly. It's not the norm. It's not the norm. Things don't reproduce normally outside of a binary configuration. So whatever that creator is, whatever that universal prime force, it is the combination of masculine and feminine, subject, object, positive and negative. That light does not come on until you flip the switch and positive and negative interact, power goes to the light and the light comes on, right? So now it gets a little more interesting. Here we go. No, there's no 20,000 genders. It ain't happening. Your college professor told you that, but that's nonsense. Along with masculine and feminine in the created world, there's also an important feature called internal character and external form. This figures in large. In humans, we have a mind, which consists of intellect, emotion, and will. Intellect, emotion, and will, or heart. Combined together, that's the heart of man, the heart of man. And we have an external form, or a physical body, correct? Show of hands. All right, animals. Now, animals are a little bit different. This is very interesting. Animals have an instinct. Animals are instinctual, which is very different from the human mind, right? A spider, look at the complexity. An engineer would say, that's really amazing. I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you, that is amazing. That's a garden spider in my yard. And the interesting thing about that is that spider did not learn to do that from its parents. The spider comes out knowing what to do. The spider hops off its mother's back and begins to weave a web. It's done by instinct. It's done automatically. Boom, a beaver builds a dam. He's got teeth that are specifically designed to chop down trees, and he drags those trees over to the dam. They know exactly what to do. They dam up the stream. They build a nest underneath. It's astounding, actually. And they do this automatically. They're not taught to do this. They know to do this by instinct. If you know about computers, you've got CMOS or BIOS, which is built into the computer, which can't change. RAM memory or ROM memory is read-only memory. It's imprinted on the computer. RAM memory is called volatile memory, and that can change. That goes up and down. You can add and subtract to RAM memory, right? But it's the same thing in the animal kingdom. They are programmed to do a certain things. Birds build nests, right? Birds don't build dams. Spiders don't build nests necessarily, right? So, very interesting. Animals have an instinct and physical body, all right? Oh yeah, well that's right. You can flash the BIOS. I stand corrected. Good point. Good catch. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm going to continue to teach it. Says you should not teach other people this nonsense. Stick with me. This, and by the way, everybody, this is a small, tiny little part out of a massive lecture. I'm just pulling out duality. There's the three blessings. There's creation, principle of creation, the force of love versus the force of law. There's all kinds of stuff. I'm just pulling out a little tiny postage stamp and elaborating on this. I want to go into this, which I haven't done in quite a while. Plants. Now it gets a little more interesting. Here we have something called inherent directive nature. Sounds imposing. It's not. It's an inherent directive nature. Inherent directive nature means this plant, God is not an all-loving God. Oh, absolutely God is. I'm going to show you that. Stay with me. I'll show you about that. This plant has an inherent directive nature. Look at the things a plant does. If nothing else, what you will take away from this lecture is when you walk by a plant or a tree or whatever, you might stop to think a little bit more closely about what you're looking at, right? Check out the things that are happening just with this beautiful flower. Look at this thing. This thing produces nuts that you can eat. I love sunflower seeds. I eat them all the time, right? Look at the color. Somehow this plant pulls nutrients from the ground through its roots, through photosynthesis turns sun into energy, assimilates water and nutrients, exchanges oxygen for carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is our poison that the plants greedily consume and happily give us back oxygen, right? Very interesting. All of these processes are going on automatically. The plant doesn't think about this because of inherent directive nature, and they have an external form or a body. That's leaves, fruit, trunk, branches, etc., etc. God, that's another lecture. God does not let innocent babies die. There is something called free will, and that is an entire lecture all by itself. I've got something for everybody. For now, let's talk about dualities, okay? Molecules, same thing, inherent directive nature. Something keeps hydrogen and oxygen in orbit to each other to create water. There's some kind of an energy that keeps those in orbit. They have molecules have an inherent directive nature. You can a physicist can tell you a water molecule. They can isolate different elements, etc. They can tell you the molecular weight, the valences, etc. So molecules have an inherent directive nature and an external form. What's the external form of a molecule? An atom. There's an internal, invisible character and an external form, an atom. Atoms have a proton electron. Atoms have an inherent directive nature. For some reason, boom. There's some kind of order there. There's some kind of invisible order that keeps them in orbit. Yes, free will and God's plan can coexist. Again, that's another lecture. So, particles have an inherent directive nature. And what's the external form of a particle, though? We still got to get an external form here. The external form of a molecule is an atom. The external form of an atom is a particle. The external form of a particle is energy. On both sides of the equation, you come down to energy. There's an energetic, invisible source to the entire world. All right? Very funny. Hilarious. So, what does that mean? That means that God, that creative force, that universal prime force, is also the harmonized being of internal character and external form, whatever that creator is, right? And the essential nature of God, if in fact we are resultant beings, we had to have a source. We didn't create ourselves. You didn't create yourself. I didn't create myself. If we are resultant beings and we have intellect, emotion, and will, the creator that created us must have it as well. And we would say the driving force of the universe is the love of God. what the heartbeat of the universe is actually the love of God. If you look at the way the world is arrayed, and again, that is a whole separate lecture of how perfect this world is set up for humans. It looks like God has created a playground for people. We ride the waves. We can snow ski. We can jump out of airplanes and ride the wind. We can fly kites. We can hit baseballs. We can do all kinds of things to tame the creation and have fun with creation. We can dive in the ocean. We can explore. We can dig in the ground and dig up cities, et cetera, et cetera. The whole planet seems to be set up for humans. Look at an orange is a very interesting fruit. Most fruits, if you look at it, fit in a human's hand. For some reason, they are ideally situated to sit in a human's hand. And an orange is particularly interesting because when you peel the orange, they are exactly human mouth-shaped wedges. They break out into human-shaped. My wife is eating one now. And it fits exactly in the human mouth. See, well, what about watermelons? Well, watermelons are interesting because they're meant to be shared amongst many humans. Right? Okay. All right. So, essentially, what are we talking about? This universal prime force. What is the nature of this universal prime force? God is the harmonized being of original. Seatbelts fastened, thinking caps on. Capture this if you capture nothing else. Harmonized being of original positivity, negativity, masculinity, femininity, internal character, intellect, emotion, and will, or heart, and external form, the created world. That's why St. Paul would say the invisible things of God are clearly seen in the things that have been created, so they're without excuse. We can see the nature of God in the things that are created. Right? So could it be? Could it be? Aren't you nice, Lorco? Aren't you a keeper? Wait, you know the true nature of God? Yeah, I do actually. Magical thinking, delusions of grandeur. But you have to take the time to stop and think about this stuff, all right? It's like if you just reflexively reject, you don't learn anything, you see? If you're full of your own perspective, you can't inherit anything. You can't learn anything. You can't advance. You can't grow. Yeah. It's another perspective. You can at least entertain a perspective, right? I come from the atheist background. I was a hardcore atheist in the 70s, right? For many reasons, until I came to belief. And I came to the belief by logic and reasoning and science, actually. So, this universal prime force has, if it only makes sense that universal prime force would be able to express itself in 1,000 different ways. 1,000 different ways. The problem is when people have their, let's say the Jewish world, the Christian world, the Islamic world, the Hindu world, whatever, people take their universal prime force and many times use that as a cudgel against someone else. Rather than being satisfied and happy with what they have, they feel the need to impose it on someone else. That becomes a problem. Again, I referred back before, previously we talked about in Ireland, the way Catholics and Protestants fought for hundreds and hundreds of years, centered on the same book. They believe in the same Bible, but they were at each other's throats for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So, could be that universal prime force is able to express itself in many, many, many different ways, right? So, also, when we talk about God's nature of being intellect, emotion, and will, and essentially the power of God, the animating force of the universe is actually love. The problem is the fall of man. The fall of man is our problem. And again, that's another lecture that I'll do at another time. And with that in mind, then we have to really re-examine many things about Scripture, especially the concept of hell. Burning forever and ever, etc., etc. This is really inconsistent with a loving God. And we have to think that perhaps it makes sense that God, if He's as powerful as we're saying He is, God would have the capability to save people despite themselves, right? If you come home from work, your house is on fire, your son is inside the house says, Dad, I'm going to end it all. I don't want to live anymore. Are you going to say, well, you're a free moral agent? No, you're not. You're going to bust the door down, and even at the price of your own life, you're going to save your child, whether he likes it or not, right? How much more is God that way? Jesus said, you being evil know how to give gifts to your children. How much more will the Father of lights give them that love him? So what we're introducing now, again, in this particular time frame, this time frame of these 2,000-year periods, there's what the Judeo-Christian tradition is now evolving once again from the Mosaic Law to the New Testament, and now to what's called the completed Testament age. We're in a brand new time when God is revealing new understanding. Einstein said something very interesting. I want to know God's thoughts. All the rest are details. And he said the cosmic religious experience is the strongest and noblest driving force behind scientific research. Right? Isaac Newton, the standard of scientific research in the 1600s, came away from all of his experiments saying all of the order of the universe could only come from an intelligent creator whom he called the Lord God. The standard of scientific research, right? So there's much more to this. I'm going to leave it right about there. I just wanted to go into duality so we can get a new perspective on the nature of God. God is not just a man. God is not just an old man throwing down lightning bolts from heaven and trying to burn people in hell forever and ever. It's nothing like that. God is actually a loving parent. The Bible says that God created man in his image, male and female. It means that God is a parent, actually, not just masculine, not just a mean old man up in the sky God, as atheists like to say, but actually God is a heavenly parent that loves us all. And I would say with that, the force be with you. Thank you for coming. So what I'll do is, I will turn off my camera. This will be on YouTube a little bit later, and I'll continue with the TikTokers.